Hello, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. My name is Haley Pals. I am the training coordinator here with Empathia. So thank you for taking time out of your day to be here. I will not take up a lot of time here. We are very happy to have our friend and our colleague, Bob Vanderpool, with us this afternoon. He is ready to provide some education, have great dialogue. So please be sure to raise your hand if you have any comments or questions throughout the presentation. I believe we might need to unmute you, which is totally fine. So please let us know. And if you have any questions, be sure to throw that into the chat. Otherwise, Bob, please take it from here.
Thank you, Haley. Good afternoon or good morning to everyone. And first of all, applause for Haley because she is trying an absolutely new webinar platform today. And so those of us who do crisis response understand how being thrown into new situations can be daunting and exciting and an adventure. And Haley is having an adventure today. So we're all with you, Haley. Good. We have a pretty small group today, so instead of having breakout sessions, I've decided that it might be better let's just raise our hands if you have a question or you have a comment, and I certainly hope that you do. And that can happen at any point during the presentation. If you ask a question about something that's coming, the meanest thing that I will say is, hey, you knucklehead, that's coming in the next slide, okay? And we'll go from there. In order to do so, I think it's a good idea just to have a couple of little ROEs. In the military, they call it rules of engagement. And one is just raise your hand if you have a comment or question at any point, and I will invite them throughout the course of our hour together. I'm going to share another one too, which is just share the mic. Please share the mic. If you tend to be on the quiet side, I'm going to ask you to look at this and say, hey, is there something I can contribute that would be helpful to someone else? Or do I have a question that I wish someone else would ask? And to please do so. And I'm also going to encourage you, if you tend to be a little bit more on the loquacious side, share the mic, okay? We've all led groups or classes or trainings where it became individual therapy with an audience, and we don't want that as well, okay? So we're all going to work together on this really well. I'm guessing that if you've done critical incident response, you've had occasions where you led groups, perhaps large groups, perhaps small groups, and you've had situations where, no, we're going to put you down in the office in the hallway and people can come talk to you if they like. We can have value either way. We can have value either way, but I think there's an increased value if we can structure our response in a way that does include group interaction, okay? I think that there are studies that talk about that when people have a chance to discuss a disturbing event or an emotional event and to do so with others who are within that same circle of impact, when they do that, there's an increased opportunity for benefit because it helps you to wrap your heads around it and receive support. Also, it's important for us to think about ourselves as organizational consultants, not just counselors. Please don't take just as being pejorative. I mean that we are counselors and we're also consulting with the leadership of these organizations so that our impact perhaps can have a positive influence beyond just the number of hours that we're on site today, right? And so not only can we help people get past this one event, but perhaps we can play a role in engendering some increased team support. Perhaps we can build some momentum toward building a culture that is a more psychologically safe workplace, okay? And I think that's important. But oftentimes managers seem to be intimidated by, do we do a group? Don't we do a group? I don't know if I can get people to go to a group. Do I make them go to a group? Do I just strongly recommend it? How do I do that? Do I take everybody out of production at the same time? They're unclear regarding the value of what the group perhaps has an opportunity to bring. And I think we've all been in situations also where a group was not held and we were sent down to the office way down at the end of the hall with windows for all the walls so everybody can see who's in there. And it led to a very long, lonely afternoon as the doc in the box, right? Haven't you had those before? And it's like, oh, um, okay. The manager sent a message that they care. The organization gives a rip, otherwise they wouldn't have brought me in. But I believe I had more to offer. I believe I had something to share. And those 3 hours in there by myself just feels empty. It feels empty. And so we want to be able to help leaders. So, what I want to talk about today is one, are there some strategies to meet? Oh, let me get out of Outlook so that I don't share too much of my screen here. Okay, good. I want to discuss some strategies about how you can communicate the value of the group, perhaps, to leaders, to managers, whether it's an employment or some other organization. Perhaps how we can help them to sell the value of joining a group to their teams so that people come. And then also, are there some ways that we can introduce the group to the group in a way that increases buy-in from those participants? Okay. And that's why I named this, I'm licensed for group therapy, but this ain't it. And I often will use that line when I sit down with my group to start out because they're scared. They feel vulnerable. Perhaps they just had defenses tripped by an event or by a loss or by something that's troubling them. And the last thing you want to do is sit in a circle and now feel further exposed, right? And so sometimes that little humor about I'm licensed for, but this isn't it. Let me tell you what it is, helps to take away some of those defenses and to be disarming. Okay, that's what I hope to accomplish. Everybody in with me. Zella thinks I'm funny. Zella, I want to introduce you to my wife. She doesn't always think I'm funny. Um, so one, when we're talking with the person that's on site, talking with the leader, sometimes we have an opportunity to shape the case. Now, Empathia does a great job of that through their call center, through their consultants. And so sometimes we have marching orders that are pretty specific. That's good. That's okay. Sometimes there's still room for flexibility because the person they talk to is not the person that's on site, right? They may have been talking to somebody from HR in New York, and we're talking to somebody in Omaha. That's where we're on site. And so those are all there. Um, and so we have an opportunity to help shape the case. And this is where we come in as a consultant. And I find language that's helpful oftentimes is something like, well, let me share with you what best practices are. And let me share with you what some of the studies and the research on what helps people return to work and return to life, what that research says. But it's also flexible because every context is different. Every corporate culture is different. Every team is different. You have different expectations for productivity and scheduling, all of that kind of thing. So I can share with you what's best practice. And now let's talk together about how we make that fit your specific situation at this particular point in time. Okay. So you're coming in as an expert, but an invited expert. It's their company, it's their organization, but you share this is what often is what's most helpful. And then sometimes that will be if there needs to be an announcement specific to the incident. So if it was, for example, an employee death and now someone is making the notification, okay, let me help you do that. Can I help you with language? And Empathia has a care model that's very helpful in helping just to structure how a manager might step up and tell their team the tragedy that happened to one of them. Or if there's just an update because there was an accident, or there was a robbery, or there's a downsizing, or there's civil unrest happening near them, whatever it may be, our job is to position that leader favorably, right? Because we're going to be there for a few hours. They have to come back tomorrow and next week and to continue to lead. We can have a greater impact if we make that leader an effective leader and a hero with her team. And so, can I help you with a management consultation? We'll get you started. I'll help you script you, and then you can hand off to me. That way, people get to see me and they say, hey, that therapist doesn't look like such a geek. Maybe I could talk to them. They seem safe. They seem to know what they're talking about. They seem competent and they seem compassionate. Okay, maybe I'll join. And then sometimes that's how it happens with a large group briefing where you support him and talk. Now, the small group is the next option. And drawing circles of impact. Who are the folks who had a similar experience? And sometimes that will be, okay, their team. Sometimes it will be the people who witnessed a tragedy. Sometimes it will be the people who had their life in danger at the same time, or all experienced something potentially gruesome. Sometimes it's different than that. Sometimes it's a division. I've been surprised sometimes by, especially in manufacturing, where, say, the folks who drive the high-lows have a culture all their own, so different from other people. Even if they weren't present at that incident, they're kind of different, you know? They are, and that may be who they align with. But helping to draw, what are the similar circles of impact? Let me help you to do that. And I can also be available for one-to-one private conversations. And sir or ma'am leader, I just want you to know that a lot of times people will come in and talk about things privately that they wouldn't talk about in the group, but being in the group helps them to enter the door. And I also want to tell you that tragedies never happen in a vacuum. And very, very likely that some of these conversations are going to be about things that aren't related to the incident at all. Or might be something else going on in their life, in their marriage, in their family, in their budgeting, whatever it may be. Or it could be that this incident activated memories and feelings specific to something that they experienced before. That kind of language is helpful as you're talking with the leaders about how do we encourage this and increase the likelihood that people will help you. So I'm just going to throw out some sentences, some statements that I've used in these types of conversations. And I welcome you also to add yours, to share yours. But here's some, and let's walk through them together. One is, my job is to support your leadership position, your efforts. The fact that you brought in an expert to support them after this event demonstrates your expertise and your compassion. Way to go. You're off to a great start. Now let's talk about how I can help you as a leader. Okay, they may not think that. They think, okay, we're going to bring a counselor in and they're going to be there for 2 hours and maybe one person will go talk to them. You're introducing increased value to that organization by saying, how do I help you be a leader? Because many times these leaders will have tremendous expertise in the technical dimensions of their job, but they may or may not have had leadership training. And it's very unlikely that they've had crisis leadership training, right? And you run into that and you get the million-mile stare from the person that's supposed to be leading the charge. Something else that is important to share, and especially in some cultures and especially in some organizations, depending upon what the recent history has been, is language like, I want you to know that tragedies often spawn a crisis of trust. And it doesn't have to be logical to be powerful. But if there was an accident, people are going to, out of the, and you don't have to go into the neuropsych part of it, but you know that when people are thinking limbically, out of their amygdalas rather than their prefrontal cortex, right, that people become distrustful and people become black and white and people become very linear in their thinking and they need a bad guy. And so it doesn't have to be logical, but they may immediately leap to, this company doesn't care about our safety policies. It's all about the CEO getting a bigger yacht. They don't give a rip about me. And if it was me who died yesterday or me who got injured, they wouldn't care. Okay. And So it's important to talk about how oftentimes tragedies launch a crisis of trust, and that this is a strategic opportunity to demonstrate trust in you and in your leadership and in your organization. Because if you show up in a compassionate way on a really bad day for somebody, that really builds trust, right? Okay. I mean, we could do group therapy right here. We've all had a worst day of our lives. And if there was somebody who came alongside you in a very effective, compassionate, competent way, you never forget that person, right? Somebody's face just jumped into your head. And if somebody who's supposed to be there for you doesn't show up, you don't forget that either. Ouch. And so this is kind of language you can use about this is an opportunity to build trust, because nothing engenders trust more than showing up well for somebody on the worst day of their life. This is a chance for you to really build the culture of your organization. Okay. Another one is that, okay, I recommend a group. I understand if you can't, but just letting you know that using a group gives me a chance to reroute and maybe to diffuse some potentially destructive sidebar conversations, because managers are going to be afraid about what are people going to say in their office with the doors closed, or at the water cooler, in the lunchroom, at the bar down the street. And just letting them know, okay, those conversations happen after crises, and perhaps this gives me a chance to reframe. This gives me a chance to diffuse and to take some of the sting out of those before they become really toxic in your environment. Okay. Um, Oftentimes you get the question from the leader, so should I be in the group or should I not? Okay. Um, if you go back to, if some of you have been doing this for a while and you were part of CISM training back in the day, which was really just designed for public safety, for cops and firefighters, cultures that have a very pecking order, line of command type of situation. The rule you learned there was never, never include somebody who's boss in with them. Have found that in the workplace, it's not as black and white as that. In the workplace, it depends on the culture of the organization and the relationship between that supervisor or that manager and the people that report to them. And the hard part about making that assessment now is that if you ask the leader, should you be in the group, they may be the last person on the planet to give you the correct answer, right? They may. Um, and so be flexible with that, but do some reading about that as you assess this leader and how are they coming across? Are they coming across with some emotional intelligence? Are they coming across with some compassion? Or are they going to take a company line that's going to dilute trust further? So some language I've used and make an assessment as I go. Sometimes it is helpful to include you. And in some contexts, it is. But it's always helpful for you to introduce and to bless and to give permission for this meeting, and then leave them to talk without their boss being present. So I'm going to trust you to make that assessment. But I've found that when a leader can do that with some compassion, acknowledging what happened and then handing off to you, that especially is very helpful. And rare occasions, they should be included as well. If you are responding to, say, a bank robbery or a retail incident where there's only a few people that are present and involved, 5 or 6, oftentimes the branch manager of a bank, the line between reporting is pretty blurred because people do the same thing. And sometimes you'll find that a culture where it does fit for them to be included and it does feel comfortable and safe. Some it's definitely not, and that's a hard call. And you make recommendations based upon best practice. Okay. Another thing that you can sell to the leader is that, okay, the one-to-one conversations, yes, I'm available. I recommend a group though, because if there's a group first, it almost always increases one-to-one utilization because people start to develop some trust, and this often activates other issues that they want to talk about. And sometimes in the group, we will talk about things like this incident may have activated memories and feelings from something that you experienced previously. That's a normal reaction. And I can be available to talk about that afterwards if you wish. And so they get greater utilization of you. Another thing would be that if I get to do a group, I will be better equipped to identify some of the themes of what your team is feeling and what they're thinking and where they're going. And I will hold confidential any specific thing that anybody shares. Okay, that's part of the group safety. But if there are themes that emerge, I will ask the group, is it okay with you if I share this theme with your leader? And if they give permission to do so, then I can share those themes with you. And that may be helpful for you in your leadership moving forward. That can be a compelling argument as well. And then, of course, asking them, would you like some help scripting your comments? Okay, I'm going to stop and breathe for a second. Any reactions to the bullets that I put up there? My last slide, I'm going to ask you for yours as well, but I invite any reactions to them. Raise your hand, and Haley, the master of teams now, is going to unmute you so you can react if you wish. Okay, got one. Hey, Mark, haven't seen you in a long time. Good to see you. Good to see you. Okay, so I've got a thumbs up, spot on from Mark so far. All right, anybody else, or we're gonna move on? Okay, large group. Okay, so say it's a situation, and this is a presentation, and this is often used when there's been a death in the workplace, whether it happened at work or happened en route to work, or if someone passed away unexpectedly or even expectedly. And so one thing that you can propose to the leader is, okay, this is an opportunity for you to demonstrate that you care about your team. And it's an opportunity for you to demonstrate that you're competent and tough enough to handle hard situations. If you want to be trusted as a leader, you need to be competent and compassionate. And so, can I help you to make the notification, to share what we know for sure, to communicate the facts that we know? Can I help you script so that you don't stray from what you know for sure, because that'll get you in trouble for sure? And can I help you with talking about next steps and where do we go from here? And then ideally, you as a clinician, you as a consultant that's on site, partner with that person. And so sometimes you script them so they can share, this is the update, this is what's happening, and you help them do that. And you're standing next to them or sitting next to them. And then you can have a chance to talk to a larger group about how grief in the workplace impacts productivity, impacts teamwork, impacts, sometimes leads to conflicts or divisiveness, and you can provide some psychoeducation. Okay. In a larger group, usually it's not highly interactive because that can be a train wreck, but it's more informational, expresses caring, establishes a sense of order. And this is where the science of drawing your circles of impact comes into place. If there are folks who are highly activated, highly impacted by something, sometimes it helps to have them separate from the big group. But the rest of the group doesn't necessarily need an interactive experience, but they need some information so they can wrap their head around it, acknowledge that it occurred, have information about how do I move forward now. And that's what they need. Okay. And then also inviting the one-to-one conversations. It's amazing having a little 5-minute speaking gig at the beginning of a response to the whole group can engender a beat down the path to your office as well. Okay. And then the small group briefings. This would be maybe 10-ish, ideally. You never know. Every situation is different. There are no hard and fast rules to this, but it's folks who are the closest to the incident or perhaps most impacted by the incident because they're part of the same team, the same shift, witnessed it, experienced it, and giving them a chance to sit down. And so here's some language that I've used when they came and they're sitting like this, scared stiff, and you got a feeling like, okay, nobody's going to talk or one person's going to talk the whole time. And so some language that's helpful. And again, I will use that line semi-humorously. I am licensed for group therapy, but I want you to know this isn't it. So first I want to build some team. And so I'm going to thank them for joining. Thank you for being here. Your doing so says you care about the person who died, you cared about the person who hurt. It also says that you care about your team. If just the fact that you showed up says that you're committed to your team. So thank you. You honor them with your presence. I'm going to tell them that it's voluntarily interactive. Okay. One of the criticisms of the CISM model was that if improperly handled, it could coerce people or add pressure for people to feel as though they had to share. And so I'm going to tell them, you don't have to talk to benefit. There are people who don't say a word and they still benefit from this group from what they hear their colleagues say. Okay, so I am not going to make anybody talk. Nobody is going to be forced to disclose. I encourage you to. I sure hope you do, because what you say could be really helpful to somebody else in your team. If one exception to that is that if you have a small group who don't know each other, so maybe they weren't part of the same team, but they just happened to be all in the parking lot of a large organization when an accident occurred, and so they all witnessed it. Sometimes if they don't know each other, I will go around the circle, ask them to go around the circle and just say their first name and what their job role is. And sometimes that just primes the pump, just opening up and only saying that. But again, I don't want to strip defenses when they've already had that happen that day or recently. So it's voluntary. Having some language. You know, studies have shown that when people who are similarly impacted by an event have a chance to talk it through with others who experience it similarly, with others who witnessed it, it helps to put the whole story together, because anytime we experience something troubling, the story that we have, the narrative that we have, is going to have holes in it. And it's amazing how those holes are what wake you up at 2:30 in the morning. And it's helpful. We feel safer when we have a chance to understand so that we can wrap our mind around it. Okay, I see a hand up, somebody whose initial is J. Can J be unmuted with a question or a comment right here? I think you're unmuted now, Jay, but I can't hear you.
I'm working on it here. I believe it's
Okay,
Jim. Jim, are you there?
he shows as muted now
Oh,
on my screen anyway.
Jim, are you able to unmute yourself?
Fine. Did I?
Hey, I hear you. Jim, yes.
Mr. Vanderpool, this is Jim Printup.
Hey, how are you?
Just fine, sir. I
Long
like the
time.
idea of, we're not going to be going around in a circle. Do you ever go over group rules? Like, we want to make sure that things are confidential, even though it never really seems to stay confidential. Do you at least mention that?
Yes. Absolutely. Just like I did with you a little bit with rules of engagement, that'll be a part of my introduction with them also. So I'll say, I'm giving you all a chance to talk it through because it's been found to be helpful. And then under game plan, I'm going to talk about, yes, anything that's, sometimes depending upon the mood in the room. Hey, Vegas rules. Anything said here stays here. And sometimes, again, depending on the mood in the room, I'll say, hey, my license depends upon confidentiality, so I take this really seriously. But I'm going to also encourage you all to hold in confidence what happens here, so it's a safe place to talk. If people outside of this group ask you, what was that group like? It's okay to share general themes or what was helpful or not helpful to you, but let's not gossip about each other. Yes. Jim, that's a great point because people need to know where the guide rails are, the rules of engagement.
I agree.
And so yeah, I will. I'll talk about this is what we're going to do. Nobody's pressured. We'll walk through the incident, and I'll say, and this is what we're going to do in the roughly hour or so that we spend. We're going to walk through what happened, or if you didn't witness it, how did you hear about it? And what did you think when you first heard about it? And you'll get denial, and you'll get shock, and you'll get anger, and you'll get fear. And I'll say, okay, and then we're going to talk about how's this impacted you? What's life been like for you since it? Because there's some very medically predictable reactions that we have to shocking events. And we're going to talk about that. And very likely you're going to find out some of the science behind why you've experienced some of those things. And then we're going to talk about what are some strategies that have been helpful to other people who've been through something similar. Because there are strategies, there's some really smart things to do and some things not to do. And again, depending on the mood of the group, I'm going to say, and I'm going to nag you to take really, really good care of yourself. And we're going to talk a little bit about what do you need from each other also. And then I'll be available for one-to-ones. So I want to give them as much information ahead of time about what it will be like so that they feel safe. It's like when you go to the dentist and they tell you what they're going to do next and what they're going to do next and what they're going to do next. It helps to mitigate a little bit of the anxiety. Hope that's helpful, Jim, and I bet you that's how you do it too. I see another hand up, someone who is E and just unmuted. Yes.
Hi, actually Nancy. I just had to download Teams though. I hadn't done Teams. Nice to meet you. I'm Nancy Wood. I'm from Pittsburgh. I'm a nurse and I'm also a therapist. I've been a therapist for 20 years now. And so I'd just like to hear your I know how I thread it, but how do you thread the needle of, if I think you're going to, if there's a suicide concern or that, and yeah, I know how I thread it, but I was curious to hear from your wisdom, sort of how you do that.
Not feeling wise most of the time. Yeah. Okay. And in Nancy, I'm going to tell you also, we dove into this in a prior webinar and we spent a whole hour on it. So that's another resource
Oh, well, I
for
can
you.
maybe get access to that.
No,
That's
but
fine. Let's just do that. Okay.
No, let's do this. That's a great question because that adds a whole nother dimension to the group. And sometimes you have situations where nobody knows cause of death. Sometimes you have situations where some do and some don't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Rule
No,
of,
I'm sorry. Actually, what my question really was more about one of the not the actual case, like the individual had actually committed suicide. It's if I am meeting with somebody and I am concerned that they might commit suicide, because that's when you have to breach confidentiality, whether it's, the safety of another person. That, I'm sorry, just to clarify.
Gotcha. Okay, great. And as part of my instructions, when I talk about the confidentiality, again, going back to Jim's question, sometimes I'll also, in fact, usually I'll say, okay, I want you to know, as a mental health professional, anything that's said here is confidential, with 4 exceptions. If I hear about abuse of children, the elderly, risk of imminent self-harm, or desire to harm somebody else. Those would be the only situations in which I would breach confidentiality. And so I will lay it out that clearly, and 99% of the people will go, okay, we get it. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Okay, great, great. Okay, thank you. And again, when you do the group and you lay it out like this, it's amazing how it increases the likelihood of them talking to you one-to-one. Okay, I see another hand up. And I see her face, but I don't see her initial. RH.
Hi, this is Raquel. I'm in Chicago, and I have a question related to the other question that was posted, and that is, then if we have to act on something that's suicidal, somebody who's suicidal, are we responsible for record keeping, or do we just tell Haley? And yeah, how does that work in terms of accountability from our end?
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, so
documentation. Do we
you're
need to be
concerned about
documenting
somebody
stuff?
that's in the group or
Yeah.
you meet with
Yeah.
independently? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're concerned about suicidal, you would do the same thing you do out of your office, and you make that assessment. You make that
About the
assessment.
documentation, though, talking
And
about
so sometimes
documentation.
there's suicidal ideation, sometimes there's a plan, sometimes there's intent, and if you
Yeah.
get all three of those, you respond and you keep them as safe as possible. In terms of documentation, I think I would keep a note on that, and I would call back to Empathia with a verbal report immediately and share with them that that's what you did. Now, I'm speaking as a subcontractor to Empathia, not officially for them, so take my input with a grain of salt. But if I was out and that happened, I'd be calling Empathia immediately to let them know, and so that it would be documented appropriately.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, those are awful. Okay, back up to E. Is that a new hand or the same hand?
That's an oldie but a goodie. Thanks so much.
Okay, okay. Great, thanks for all your interaction. Okay, and then there's next steps. What do you do? Because never, ever, ever should you have the group and everybody says, wow, that's interesting, but now what? And so it's important to talk with them about tactical, right? People who get through hardship best have a bifocal approach where they can see strategically, this is the goal, this is how I grow, this is what I want to be in the future, but how do I get past this hour, past today in a way that's toward that goal? And when people are shaken by something, they become extremely tactical and black and white and linear, right? That's what amygdalas do. And so it's important to be consulting with and have a game plan with the on-site contact with the leader about, okay, how flexible can we be about return to work right here? And my recommendation would be that there are going to be some people who just say, I can't stay. Okay, talk to your manager about that. Longitudinal studies talk about that if people can remain and continue to move forward, even if it's not full productivity, but adapted productivity, that they tend to come out better and farther, and they tend to be safer because they're within the confines of hopefully supportive relationships and the structure of a time schedule and familiar tasks. And that's helpful in us moving forward. Physics class. An object in motion tends to stay in motion, and an object at rest tends to stay at rest. Those who stay stuck in freeze tend to have really bad outcomes. And so are there ways that we can help people? Okay, maybe they can't drive a truck past where the accident happened, but can they load trucks for a while? Maybe they can't work the machine where someone lost a hand, but can they do something else that sorts parts? Maybe they can't be working at the night shift at that convenience store, but can they stock shelves or work at a different location for a while? If you fall off a horse, get back on a pony as quick as possible. And so have those conversations with leaders ahead of time, and it should come from them and reinforced by you, but ask the questions. Okay, as you go back to work, be careful. You're going to be distracted. So don't do anything dangerous or expensive for a while, and be non-defensive if somebody looks over your shoulder. In fact, ask people to look over your shoulder. Do that for each other. Is it okay to drive? What conversation should you have with your supervisor about moving forward? Another thing for next steps is asking people, what's worked for you in the past? Okay, everybody's different. What is restful and peaceful and calming for one person bores another, right? What's exciting and invigorating for one terrifies another. The best tool is the one that you use. And so ask people, okay, so what have you done in the past when you've been through something stressful? Or have you experienced grief before? Or you've been frightened before? What helped you to stabilize? Do it again. Okay, do it again. And you can also share, here's some other things that have been helpful to other people in similar situations. And some psychoeducational can be helpful. Okay. A lot of the time, people will talk about the best thing that I got out of this group was when I talked about the fact that I couldn't sleep. I checked my lock 17 times. I almost threw up when I came back to work. I can't eat. I can't concentrate. And somebody else in the circle went, yeah, me too. Me too. Because outcomes, one of the predictors of outcomes is if people attribute meaning to their normal medically predictable reactions, if they see that I'm a normal person experiencing normal reactions to an abnormal event, and if I don't do something stupid to make it worse, I'll probably be okay, versus I experience these reactions and everybody else around seemed fine, so I must be a pathetic wimp too frail for life. I'm going crazy. You can see what the trajectory of that will be. So that's important. It's important to identify and remind them, okay, so if you went through something hard before, who did you call? Did you spend some time with your mom? Did you talk to your supervisor? Did you talk to your therapist? Did you spend some time with your faith leader? Who was it that was helpful to you? Do you have a circle of friends that you can process this with? And because the normal, regular supportive relationships are really, really helpful. We all think that, we're therapists, we're nice. Why would anybody be ever threatened by us? But for many, many people, having to talk to us is a scary deal. Doesn't make sense to us, but it sure does to them. Okay. And so connecting them with their natural supports is helpful. And then invite conversations with you and refer to higher levels of care as indicated. Okay. All right. We've got about 15 minutes left. Anybody here, have you had any of those nightmares in trying to discuss this with leaders, with groups that weren't responsive? Was there language that you used that I didn't cover? Did you have any questions or any responses to that? And just raise your hand and we'd love to cross-pollinate your wisdom. Yes, I see a hand up. And I see a gentleman, but I don't see an initial. There you go.
Yeah, good. I'm Jamie Gavin.
Hi, Jamie.
And the thing that, just a comment, because I really enjoyed the whole presentation. I came in a little late, but I've enjoyed it greatly, and it's been really helpful. But something that I have noted is that people try not to think or feel what they're thinking and feeling, the unwanted thoughts, and they're trying to avoid them only exacerbates them and potentiates them. And so it's letting them know that what they're thinking and what they're feeling is okay. It's different than what I might think or feel, or what others might think or feel. But everybody's life experience is different, and that's where their thoughts and feelings come from. And kind of normalize what they might feel is abnormal to everybody else. oh, I shouldn't be thinking this way. I should be able to sleep at night. I shouldn't cry so much, and so to walk them through an acceptance of themselves and their thoughts and feelings, because then they can move on. That's the thought.
That's really helpful. And isn't it amazing? If you've responded to an incident, let's say it was a bank robbery, and there were 5 tellers, and they all seemingly from the outside experienced the same threat to their lives. But you get there, and one's in fetal position, one's crying uncontrollably, one's giggling, one's cussing like a sailor, and one's chewing on a donut and wants to go shopping, right? And the incident is not the incident. It's about the impact, not the incident. And different people will be impacted by different things. And my guess is that if you came back 24 hours later, they may just have played musical chairs. But you don't know what somebody's DNA is like, what they've experienced in the rest of their life that would make this more impactful for them. And so you're absolutely right. Giving people permission to have different reactions to the same incident is tremendously liberating and therapeutic. Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I see a hand, LU. Please unmute. LU.
That may be me.
That was you.
Yes, Zella, ZLU, it may be what it's saying.
Okay.
Just wanted to insert when I'm doing groups, and I do a lot of groups that are telemental health, groups for crisis, for different issues. And one of the things that I've done ways that I will kind of start off when I'm doing my introduction is that I might ask, again, according to what the issue is, as well as the culture that I'm working with, how many of you have experienced some type of trauma or grief in the last year or 2 years? That's doing my introduction, that just begins to get people engaged. And I will go back later on as I am getting ready to start talking about coping skills. I will go back then and double up. We mentioned before that most of us have dealt with some type of stress or grief or trauma in the past. What are some of the coping skills or some of the things that help you to be able to cope with what you went through, either during that time or even stresses that you may be going with at present? So that's one way I kind of get that talk going. But one of the other things I do, especially when it is grief, is I will ask them at the beginning if they would like to share their stories and the positive stories and memories and things in regards to the deceased coworker. And
Yes.
that gives them an opportunity to begin to open up. And I go back and I say, I always like to start off talking about those positive things, the positive memories and things. And I start off that way before we begin to talk about how did you hear about, where did you hear, things of that sort. So that's just some things that I found that have been helpful in getting the group involved, especially when I'm doing the telemental health groups. Thank
I
you.
love that. Yeah, the telemental health, those can be tough, can't they?
They can.
They
Yes.
can be tough. And they can be tough because sometimes everybody's sitting in around one conference room and you can barely hear some of them. And sometimes it's because they're widely geographically dispersed. And yeah, it's tough to get buy-in, but when you do, it's amazing how well it works. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that you went back and you acknowledged that everybody had a history. Sometimes say in a group that's grief oriented, and you kind of get a feeling that maybe the person wasn't universally loved who passed away. Even acknowledging that and say, Hey, I want you to know, I just want to acknowledge the death of your colleague, John Smith. I'm so sorry. And I'm sorry about the impact on you. And I understand some of you may have been close friends and it was personal, not just professional. And maybe some of you worked with him but didn't know him very well. And, life's complicated. Perhaps there was some tension between John and some of you too. That's life as well. But he was part of your team. And so we're here to commemorate that, to honor him and to process it. And sometimes just having that permission not to all have to pretend like this person was an Eagle Scout helps also.
Yes. And at the end, I go back and share what I've heard. And basically, it's usually very always something that's very positive. So at the end of the session, I go back and say, this is what I've heard. And this is a way, just in remembering, the person, that you can continue with your memories. And I will usually say that before I close out and things.
I really like that. You know what? If there's been a loss like that too, that's also can be a part of your introduction with the group. Thank you for being here.
Yes.
Your presence honors John Smith
Mhm.
and honors your teammates. And we honor those who are living sometimes by how we honor those who have passed. And John was a part of your life. We're not erasing him from history. And so let's share some of our memories about him together as well. And that seems to activate freedom to speak and to share and to feel. Yeah. Good. Others. Have you ever had managers say, we're not closing down the line, we're going to keep going? I went out to one time for manufacturing, and he said, if I take these 8 people offline, do you know that it costs us? And he told me it was $2,713.57 every 15 minutes. And he had it calculated. And I wanted to argue with him, but wouldn't have been a wise thing to do in that setting. Anybody else have situations like that where you've had to advocate or not just because it was the best it was going to be? Mark, I see you nodding your head. Yes, you've had it. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, when they start quoting those numbers, then one of my responses, I hear you. I know that there's a financial constraint here, and again, your operational budget. What happens if one of those individuals get injured because they're not in a good mental state of mind? So you're risking safety and a lawsuit. How much is that worth?
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, sometimes again, they're looking at the operational pressures. They're not always looking at, all right, the safety aspects and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good. And that's a hard one, man. It's hard because you are an invited expert. You're an invited person to come in. They get to call the shot. You make recommendations, and that's where the language of, well, best practices is indicated, or investing in the time now has been found to reduce employee attrition, lawsuits, workers' compensation costs, somebody else bringing a gun to work tomorrow, without being threatening or intimidating. But yeah, sometimes you just have to go with the flow and do the best that you can with the resources and the opportunity that's there. Because if you become too hard-headed about it, they won't ask for help next time, and they may need it worse next time. Yeah. Thank you. I saw a chat. Somebody. So you once did a group in the middle of a factory, 75 people working around sorting. I've done those before too. And it kind of feels like compassionate loitering sometimes, doesn't it? And I think that can still be very valuable, of you just being around and they're working and you're circulating safely, circulating and just being there and being available. We don't always get to sit in a perfectly round circle and to behave like clinicians, do we? Yeah. Yeah. Any other comments? Any other questions?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. This is Dominic, and at the risk of being redundant, I emphasize how the range of reactions, cognitively, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, are unlimited. And I frequently use the phrase, what you're experiencing are normal reactions to an abnormal event. And that kind of clears the air. In all the handouts, there's this long list of reactions that people can have. And you can have all of them, you can have some of them, you can have absolutely none of them. And that's normal for you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dominic. Yes, they need permission to be human, don't they? They sure do. And
Yep.
normalize. Because a lot of times when people do come, their question, their unwritten or unspoken question is, am I okay? Am I going crazy? Am I doing this okay? And so that's a piece of it. Yep. I saw one more chat. Tim, okay, some of you have to go. Understood. Understood. Sometimes more of a presentation on how to deal with stress versus trying to ask them to share. Absolutely. And that's where more of a psychoeducational presentation can be. And sometimes they have to be really, really short. And so sometimes, again, depending on the situation, hey, did you know that box breathing or cyclic breathing or bilateral stimulation or something like that can be helpful in calming you? Sometimes it also, just real quick, sometimes it also is, hey, folks, we've been stressed before and we probably had an Achilles heel. There probably was something destructive or not terribly smart that we did to deal with our stress. You don't have to tell us in the group, but know what it is and make a U-turn before you get there. And that way, perhaps we can keep one tragedy from turning into another tragedy. Okay, see some people need to drop off. Understood. Thank you for your presence and your participation, and I hope this is helpful. Haley, any words of inspiration?
I don't know if I have words of inspiration, but I just want to thank everyone. So thank you, Bob. Thank you, all of the attendees. I hope you have a great Wednesday and remainder of your week. And we will see you back here in a couple months with our next topic. So take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was wondering how to get some of those older programs that you spoke about.
Yeah. Haley, can you help her? I know they're archived through the Empathia website somehow.
And they are, I can go ahead and get that information for you. If you want to shoot me an email, that would be great. I think you should have it somewhere in the invite, but it's hpals, which is PALS, at empathia.com.
And then will we get the electronic of this, the recording of this?
Yes,
A
this
link
was
to that,
recorded.
or
Yep.
do
Yep.
we
So-
get a link to it when it's okay? All right. Thanks so
Yeah.
much for everything you're doing.
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely.
All right. Take care, everybody. Happy New Year.
Thanks.
Happy
You too.
New Year.
Okay, checking out. Thanks, Haley.
Thank you. Bye-bye.